And you know, then that's when you see a lot of negative changes to the environment. But you know, here, you know, eventually the animals will survive. You know, the big question is, will the two-legged animal adapt? You know, because eventually we're gonna have no choice but to adapt. So we're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do. And I know we haven't really seen any snail kites out here. And an example of adapting to the environment, you know, the snail kite population was in a great decline because the native apple snails that they ate were disappearing. So they weren't having a food source. And also too, even like the snail kites, when they make their nests in the Everglades, it's only that much above the water. So when they make a nest and you raise that water table, you flood their water. Or you make the water close enough where the predators can get into the nest. So, you know, that impacts them. So that the lack of their food and the water impacting how they nest, you know, really put their populations in decline. And then lo and behold, we started getting this big old huge invasive apple snails. And scientists were worried that that was going to further harm the snail kites. It wasn't going to help it. So they're like, oh, if the big apple snails get into the Everglades and take over, it's going to be no good. Then what they started seeing happening is the younger hatchlings of the snail kites, the beaks were larger. They evolved to be able to eat the large apple snails. So now that snail kite population is rebounding because of the invasive apple snail.
In a matter of a few years, bro. Yeah. Just a few years, so their beaks got longer and
evolved to have longer beaks to be able to eat those snails. So
pretty amazing.
So nature will adapt if you give it that opportunity, and nature can heal itself if you give it that opportunity. It's just that we're not giving it the opportunity to make, you know, to heal.
Well
yeah.
Their nose gets longer, right?
Yeah, right.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. It's an example in modern times how nature clearly, you know, adapts. Because you hear about it in history, how, you know, the dinosaurs, they shrunk and they adapt to the climate. You know, the alligator had a great design initially. It didn't really change that much, maybe in size, because they're not, thank God they're not as humongous as they used to be.
Right.
You know, otherwise, you know, we'd have an alligator bigger than this boat.
Yeah.
But
Old Joe was pretty big.
yeah, so they adapted, you know, in size, but everything else kind of really, you know, stayed the same. So, you know, if you think of that, sometimes to me it's a lot of common sense and observing nature as your teacher. You know, because sometimes, you know, we forget that science evolved out of the natural world in a quest to understand what you were seeing, right? Trying to figure out why. So now everybody's like, the science, and they're worried about the numbers, and they get disconnected from the natural system. Ah, hey, stay back there. What'd you do? The sound.
Points at her. What?
There's food here somewhere.
She's smiling, going, yeah. I like sandwiches too. I eat meat too, you know.
I'll eat some cheese too. It don't matter. As long as it ain't Swiss, right?
Mm-hmm.